Hello, good morning. Today our guest is Professor Arthur Nelson, and we're going to be talking about bullshit. Hello, Arthur. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really happy to be speaking to you. So, around 2019, you published a paper on bullshit. What is bullshit, Arthur?
Bullshit was defined by the philosopher Harry Frankfurt as something you say when you don't actually care about whether it's true or false. So it's basically sentences produced absent concern for the truth. For example, if you get a question and you don't really know the answer, you just make something up to seem like you know what you're talking about. That's one example of bullshit. But the kind of bullshit we focus on a lot in psychological research is a particular type called pseudo profound bullshit. So that's bullshit you say composed out of abstract buzzwords to make it sound like you are smart, like you're saying something deep. So you're trying to impress others with your deep, profound wisdom. Uh, and uh, and actually, Gordon Pennycook and colleagues they constructed a scale to measure receptivity to pseudo profound bullshit by just constructing these bullshit sentences like randomly stringing together words into grammatically correct sentences. And they included these kinds of abstract buzzwords. Initially, these were from Deepak Chopra tweets, so kind of new age-ish buzzwords to make it sound profound. We have also constructed other scales later using all kinds of different buzzwords, like we have used ideological buzzwords, left-wing, right-wing buzzwords. We have used financial buzzwords. We've used postmodern buzzwords, corporate bullshit, and so on. So there are many different types of this. Yeah.
Why do people find bullshit appealing?
There are many different reasons for that. Well, I think one reason is just people normally assume when they communicate with others that others are sincere, that they are trying to say something that's true and that's meaningful, that makes sense. So they're assuming that, um, and there are many different actually predictors that have been studied in the literature. For example, people who have lower analytical thinking are more susceptible to bullshit. They're more likely to fall for it, so to speak. And other predictors would be actively open-minded thinking, those who think it's important to constantly update your beliefs and consider different perspectives. They're less likely to fall for bullshit. And another one would be people who believe that the truth is just a subjective feeling. uh, Truth is just a gut feeling. If you feel that it's true, then it's actually true. They are also more likely to fall for bullshit because yeah, if it feels right, if it sounds right, then it must be true or it must be meaningful and profound. And another one is that people who have this tendency to perceive patterns, this is called apophenia sometimes, the tendency to see patterns everywhere. For example, even in completely random sequences of numbers, like coin toss sequences, people think that there is a pattern. They're more likely to perceive bullshit as meaningful as well, which is natural, of course. They think that there's a meaningful pattern even in completely nonsense or yeah.
So, I know that this is not a part of the paper we're discussing now, but based on
Mhm.
what you have said,
Yeah.
is bullshit driving the demand for conspiracy theories? Because conspiracy theories they like to
Mhm.
identify different patterns, even when they don't correlate with each
Yeah.
other.
I don't know what is causing what, but there's definitely a correlation, a fairly strong correlation. So individuals who are more likely to fall for bullshit or also tend to be more likely to fall for conspiracy theories. Yeah, there's definitely a common core there. There are common psychological factors that make people susceptible both to conspiracy theories and to at least the kind of bullshit we have studied in research. What exactly is the causality there? We don't know. That's a fairly complicated issue, but probably there are common psychological factors that can explain these correlations. That, in fact, there's very strong correlations between susceptibility to many different kinds of misinformation, not just bullshit and conspiracy theories, but many different kinds. Some people are just more susceptible to misinformation generally.
I agree. And there are different types of bullshit. So, for example, if you post a story that's relevant from 2010, but it's twisted to spin a particular narrative, that's also fake news. And I experience this all the time. The story is indeed legitimate, but it is either promoting a particular narrative or it is not related to the present context. So, some time ago, around maybe last year, there was a legitimate story online about Facebook suppressing conservative news, but it was not related to a particular Tucker Carlson fiasco. Not at
Mhm.
all. And people fall for those stories quite easily.
Yeah,
I think
but
that's also a type of bullshit.
well, I mean,
And
there's a
not
subtle.
only is that type of bullshit, but they do it to be a part of a group. So they're projecting group membership when they consume fake news without appreciating that it is fake news. It's like being a cool kid.
Yeah, I mean, there's a subtle distinction between bullshit and just lying. Like fake news is usually defined as something that's made up. That's
Yes.
you spread a story that you know is not true, and that's like according to Frankfurt's definition, that's not bullshit because then you know that you are lying.
But some
The
people
bull,
don't know. Some people don't know. A
yeah,
lot of people don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, and then that would be bullshit because then you don't care about whether what you're saying is true or
Exactly.
false. Yeah. So
It,
there is a subtle distinction there in the academic literature, but yeah.
it's like with AI and deep fake and
Mm.
people not knowing how to differentiate AI from real videos, and that's becoming increasingly difficult. But I have observed that AI videos are more appealing. They're pretty. They're pretty buildings. The characters look perfect. They are glowing. So that's one tool I use to differentiate AI videos from real videos. Real videos don't look like natural advertisements.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And whenever I see a video online and the people they look too refined, I know that it is AI.
Yeah.
But what about ideologies? Are conservatives more likely to embrace bullshit? Are left leaning people more likely to embrace bullshit?
Yeah. So this is something I've studied quite a lot, actually, both in this paper from 2019 and in research done after that. And it's a little bit more complicated. It's not just liberals versus conservatives. Often the research because the research has focused on the US context, there's been a lot of focus on conservatives versus liberals in this kind of bi-party context. But there's more variation in ideology than that. In the Swedish context, for example, we have social liberal right wingers, because the right wing is more about what unites them are economic issues. So that's the main split between left and right. So we have actually social conservatives on the right and in the center, slightly right of center. And we have some social conservatives on the right, and we have liberal conservatives on the right. And on the left, we have social democrats. We have those who like have a more ecological green ideology, and we have socialists. So there's a lot of variation. And what we find, there are studies from the US that find that conservatives are more likely to fall for bullshit than liberals. And in the Swedish context, we also found pretty clearly that social conservatism, not economic conservatism, but social conservatism, is associated with higher susceptibility to bullshit generally. And that is because social conservatives on average, not every single one, of course, but on average, tend to have a little bit different cognitive style or a different way of searching for knowledge. For example, a little bit less analytical thinking on average. But we also find that bullshit susceptibility is higher among some groups on the left. For example, in the first study, we found that those who voted for the Green Party were actually the highest on bullshit receptivity. And in a later study, we found that the Social Democrats were higher. So it's not always the same group, but we do find that there's a lot of variation within the left and the right as well. And we actually find that those individuals who are the least susceptible to bullshit, these are the social liberals who are right of center in economic issues and the more social liberal on the social issues. And actually, in this last study we did, there are some research in the US where they have found that the source matters a lot. Like if you say that this bullshit, you claim that this comes from a conservative source, then the conservatives will think that it's profound. And if you claim that it's from a liberal source, the liberals will think that it's profound. So some researchers have really, emphasized that it's more about, ideological congruence, if the bullshit is congruent with your ideology or not. So we tested that in the Swedish context by looking at many different kinds of bullshit. We had like left-wing bullshit with left-wing jargon, left-wing buzzwords. We had right-wing bullshit. We had postmodern bullshit, which we thought would be more appealing to left-wingers. We had financial bullshit, which we thought would be more appealing to right-wingers. And the weird thing was that we found, although there was an effect of ideological congruence, the right-wingers were a bit more susceptible to right-wing bullshit and the left-wingers a bit more to left-wing bullshit. We actually found that the right-wingers were even more susceptible to postmodern bullshit. I mean, the conservative right-wingers. And that was because of their general tendency to be a little bit more susceptible to bullshit overall, the conservative right-wingers. So that was kind of weird finding, but really shows that it's not just about ideological congruence. There are real differences between different groups on the left and the right.
Arthur, what do we mean by moral foundation? I should have asked that question earlier.
Moral foundations. Well, this is from a theory called moral foundations theory, which came something like around 2007 and then quickly became the most popular theory in contemporary moral psychology. And it has several basic assumptions. One is that we have these moral intuitions, which are kind of like gut feelings, which tell us what is right and wrong. And then we make up reasons to justify these moral judgments we make. For example, it's wrong to steal. That's something we feel because of our inherited genetic mechanisms that have been shaped by evolution. And then we make up reasons to justify this. And Jonathan Haidt and colleagues who introduced this theory, they try to identify moral intuition that recur in different cultures, and also that can be, I think, also looking at both evolutionary and anthropological evidence. And they claim that there are several different moral foundations. Morality is not just about, for example, rights and harm and maximizing utility and those kinds of things. It's also about, for example, being loyal to a group, following the tradition, not questioning authority, not doing things that are disgusting. Those are things that people moralize, that people think it's really wrong to do things that are disgusting or impure or that challenge authority and so on. So they posited originally 5 different moral foundations, but I think now they have 6 different in the latest version of the model. So they wanted to broaden the sort of conception on morality, and the definition. This is based on an evolutionary account So these moral foundations are thought of as shaped by evolution because they helped to um, make groups function more effectively. They help to suppress an individual's self-interest, to help to favor or to help other individuals or to help the group. So
Author, I want to talk to you about financial bullshit because
mhm.
I've noticed the rise of financial entrepreneurs. These people without experience in business or even finance, but apparently they are seen as the authority on all financial issues. What is financial bullshit? Why is it being proliferated so quickly?
Well, financial bullshit is the kind of bullshit that uses financial terms, basically. So it's yeah, there are these financial buzzwords that you can use in creating the sentence. But I think financial bullshit is basically a type of organizational bullshit, or yeah, what would be called corporate or organizational bullshit. And there's some really good work on this in. I think it's among sociologists who have studied this, the rise of this kind of bullshitting in modern contemporary societies. Um, what was the question again?
No, no, we are talking about financial bullshit
Yeah,
and why it is
yeah,
proliferating, why people like it.
yeah, yeah.
That's the question. I just find it disturbing that individuals are willing to pay
Mm,
their money for people who cannot prove their expertise.
mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, in contemporary society, there's a lot of sort of people who market themselves as, you know, I don't know what's called gurus or something
Yes,
like that.
yeah, guru and self help.
There's a lot of talkers, so to speak.
Yes,
Here are people talkers, people who just make up things and don't really have the genuine expertise about it. And yeah, I guess in contemporary society with social media and digitalization and everything, it's become more important to reach out to people, to provide simple messages, to be able to formulate things in ways that generate clicks. And social media encourages exaggerating things, presenting black and white narratives, simplistic narratives, exaggerating, using a lot of, for example, trying to create outrage. So if you just make up something that
I
creates
call
more
it shit
outrage.
posting.
Hmm?
It's called shit posting. So Twitter
Yeah,
is really
yeah,
upper class shit posting. That's what Twitter
yeah,
is. Upper class
yeah,
shit posting.
yeah.
Twitter is either people who are upset because they're experiencing downward social mobility, or people who are really rich, or individuals who
Hmm.
just like to be outrageous all the time. Shit
Yeah.
posting.
Yeah.
So I've seen people move from over 6,000 to over 25,000 followers, to over 100,000 within 2 years. Some of them are really good. Many are just shit posters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter what they post, they get 500 comments. So if they post a tweet from an unknown book,
Yeah.
500 people respond, and I wonder what is generating that type of popularity. So
Yeah.
if one person goes on Twitter and he makes the most obvious point, I scroll, other people would continue to scroll, but on the other hand, 200 people stop and they comment, or 20,000 people retweet. And I wonder, why are some people being promoted? Is it because they know how to manipulate the space, or is it inorganic?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes people are just a bit lazy. They don't really actually read and think about, is this really true or false? They just, automatically share it if it sounds good or so. Or if it's like, if it comes from my side of the political spectrum, from my ideological group, then I will share it and so on. So that's one thing. But of course, these people who are shit posting and they're very good at understanding the algorithms.
Yes.
They they're able to to use that to their advantage. No, I lost track of the question. Why do people share this kind of content? Why do they like it? Is that
that was an earlier question. No, we're just talking about shit posters and why I don't like them. Yeah, yeah, why I don't like shit posters. Well, some of these people are not organic. It's not because they understand the algorithm. No, if you're an unknown, like if you're an anonymous person with over 100,000, 200,000 followers within 1 or 2 years, sometimes it is organic. Usually, it is not. You don't move from 2,000 followers to 30,000 in 2 weeks or a month without being famous or going viral.
Yeah. And I guess they make money of it as well.
So like once I saw this tweet online, and it's true, some girl, she said that she was making a lot of money on Twitter and she got her cash, but it apparently it was shown after a while that Elon Musk was a fan of that girl. Probably he liked her. So some of these people, they're not organic.
Yeah.
If you are a verified Twitter user, you're subsidizing these accounts.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how that works, but
you're subsidizing these accounts. Are you on Twitter?
Huh?
Are you on Twitter?
I have Twitter, but I don't use it actively. I check it out sometime. Yeah.
Exactly. Like I'm not interested in social media, but some people encourage me to post because I promote my writing and my podcast, and I didn't post frequently. And then some of my fans said, "Okay, you write, you have a podcast, but your following is a bit low," and I'm like, "Whatever." But then when I started to pay attention to detail, I recognized that some people I didn't follow them. I was not engaging with that type of data, yet they were always popping up into my feed. So now I'm like, okay, when you are a verified user, you are subsidizing those accounts. It's like redistribution. So you pay £30, £20 a month, and your audience doesn't grow. The only people whose audience are those who go on Twitter and they say, okay, 6 million Jews did not die in the Holocaust. I hate Jews, literally. That's what they say. And they get these thousands and millions of likes.
Yeah, I mean, also, I guess the general point then would be that social media companies as well can contribute to spreading bullshit and not always spreading the most accurate or empirically verified stories. But I mean, I think it's important to think about the fact that there's been a democratization in the sense that anyone today can access any kind of information online. Yes. It's not just there are a bunch of experts who tell us what to think, or a bunch of whatever traditional authorities who tell us what to think. Anyone can sit on the internet and browse and find information, and then it's easy to understand why people would fall into different kinds of rabbit holes or come across something that sounds appealing that makes them interested. And because there's so much content that isn't verified and content that is produced just for making money or for gaining status.
I think I'm disagreeing with you a bit. I am disagreeing with you because the issue is that, well, I won't even say probably, but the truth is that we need people with literacy and numerical skills to work to do jobs. But beyond transferring skills to people so that they can work, we don't need the average man or woman to be reading. Like society does not benefit from the mass interest in ideas. Most people are not that smart. I don't think that mass literacy is really that good.
Mass literacy in what sense?
So as I said, people should learn how to read and do mathematics so that they can get jobs. But the idea that we need a reading public is nonsense. Because there's a difference between what is worth reading and what is not worth reading. And
Yeah,
we
well, I
only
think
want some people to read so that they can go to work. We really don't want them online reading anything at all.
no, but we want them to be able to. We want them to be able to think critically about the information they find online, because today everyone is going to use the internet in one way or another to find information. I don't think that can be.
They can't do it. Many of them, they cannot do it. They're not capable of critical thinking. They're not.
No, well, I mean
They're
that
not.
that varies, of course, but I think we should try to promote it as much as possible within the school system, that people get better at it, better at. I mean, at whatever level you are at, people get better abilities to see through bullshit and this kind of thing. Although not everyone is going to be able to do it, as you're saying. Of course,
Yes.
there's a huge variation in abilities.
Yes, the huge variation in abilities. And we know, look, we are proving that what really matters is the abilities of the individuals, because with equal opportunities and access, you get different outcomes based on individual abilities. And this is what we're noticing with the ubiquity of knowledge. So I read The Economist online. I don't subscribe. I've discovered a tool to evade the subscription model, so I don't subscribe. Other publications are free. Many books online are free. Yet people have never been dumber. On paper, they're really brilliant. The Flynn effect was observed, but now it's been reversed. We are smarter than our ancestors, at least some of them. But when you go online and when you listen to people, even college educated people, you're just disappointed.
Yeah,
I'm really disappointed. I can't believe this.
I'm not sure it's just about abilities, though. I think there's something about the new digital landscape that's not completely healthy. The way that social media works, for example, by strengthening or by promoting outrage, these kinds of wild exaggerations, and people who, there's so many examples of these sort of public figures and science influencers, public intellectuals who have become more and more radicalized, more and more extreme over time by posting things, by being in that kind of ecosystem. So I don't think. I mean, there's also something about the way that the digital world works today that needs to be improved and fixed.
So how can a guru like yourself help to solve the problem? Are you a guru?
No, absolutely not.
Yes, you're a
I'm not.
guru because I went on your
No,
website
no,
and
no,
you're
no. I'm not a guru. For me, a guru is something negative. It's someone is someone who pretends to possess deep insights and bullshits a lot to gain followers, and it promotes pseudoscience and quackery. So I really don't hope I'm a guru. I'm not trying to be. I'm
you
just a
should
scientist.
you should try to be a guru. When you become a guru, you make a lot of money. And plus, expertise is dead. We're no longer living in the age of the respected expert. Expertise is dead. What matters is influence on social media.
I think
No,
that's
people these days unfortunately don't care for experts.
I think we should avoid those kinds of sort of exaggerated claims. I mean,
I don't think
expertise.
it's well. I'm listening to you, but look, let me tell you
Yeah,
why I don't think it's exaggerated. So, for example, I have no problem with a self-educated people, which I sorry, to a self-educated person commenting on politics and science, because
yeah,
they're people who didn't go to university but they're smart, they're intelligent. So I have no issue with a random
yeah,
person commenting on science and politics, as long as that person is providing evidence or rational arguments. But I do have a big issue with
yeah,
comedians talking about science and
yeah,
issues.
yeah, yeah. I
That,
mean,
like, I don't, Dave, nobody should listen to Dave Smith.
yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that, but I just think that the situation is more nuanced than that. Like in Sweden, for example, there's a lot of trust in scientists still. scientists have very high trust in
Yes,
society. If
in the
a
different
scientist
society.
says something on national news, it's like it's very authoritative. So I wouldn't say that in Sweden, for example, or in Scandinavia, that expertise is dead in that sense. But
No.
yeah, there's during COVID, the pandemic, for example, there was an increase in belief in this completely unsubstantiated conspiracy theories about all kinds of things. Actually, more people were spending time on the internet, so more people fell into
Scandinavia is a peculiar case. It is a I trust society, an intelligent society, and during COVID, politicians from Scandinavia engaged the public. So one particular, or was it two? I don't remember, but some vaccines were discontinued. They were rolled out and then discontinued due to scientific concerns. That type of maturity did not occur in other places. So in Scandinavia, there was a minor backlash to the vaccines, and the political class responded in an intelligent manner. In other countries, when people criticize the vaccines, they're automatically seen as weirdos and cranks. And Scandinavians were not anti-vax, but if you know two people who took the vaccine and as a result they got quite ill, that's okay to question the efficacy of the science. And Scandinavians are not anti-vax. So the
yeah,
approach
yeah,
of the political class to the vaccine issue in Scandinavia was so mature that most Scandinavians, they had no issue with COVID or the vaccine, because they were aware that if any study or serious scientist noted that the vaccines were problematic, the political class was going to respond it. Whereas in other places, the political class was not receptive to the problems of the population.
yeah. I mean that I don't know all the other cases, but in Sweden, it wasn't about the efficacy of the vaccine. It was just that the Astra vaccine had a side effect among young people. There
Yes,
was a risk of heart conditions. I mean, uh, what's it called?
myocarditis.
Yeah, among young people, and
Yes,
that risk was considered too big with the Astra vaccine, so that was discontinued. So it
exactly, and
wasn't.
that's smart. That did not happen in many other countries.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah. I mean,
political
that's
class
possible. I
acted
mean,
like robots.
yeah, it's curious that there seemed to be a lot of politicization of the discourse around COVID, and it was kind of different in different countries. The U.S., the right, were the ones who were sort of minimizing the pandemic, saying it's not very serious. We should go back to everyday life, right? That was the right. In Sweden, that was more the left saying that we should. So it's just a funny example of how things were politicized different in different countries, and but that of course has a huge effect as well. That people, if your political side takes a sort of a specific stance, then people start believing that and start to selectively process information to justify those stances.
And I have read post-COVID studies showing that the Swedish approach was not disadvantageous. So over the long term, the death rates in Sweden were lower despite Sweden not having lockdowns.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I
And none
think
of
it's
these
very.
studies are from cranks.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated though because I mean there are so many differences. Sweden is kind of a big country geographically. We don't have a huge population compared. So it's not like we are. There's a lot of space to move around. It wouldn't make sense to have a lockdown in Sweden to keep people locked into their apartment because you can safely move around and not meet other people very often. So it's
Yes,
like,
yes, and not only and the Swedish people are. I've never been to that part of Europe, but I know persons who have, and they say the Swedes are polite but not sociable.
yeah, I mean, yeah, there's some truth to that. They're more reserved. Yeah.
No. Well, and you're from Norway.
No, I'm from Sweden, but I work in Norway as well.
Oh,
So
okay,
and
because your email address ends with no.
yeah,
Oh, so you're from
yeah. I'm a professor at University of Bergen, but I also affiliated with Linköping University in Sweden, and I am from Sweden. So that's why I mentioned the Swedish context. But it's the Scandinavian context is fairly similar overall.
Oh, so you
So
can tell me about Sweden, about the Swedish people then. So what are they like?
what are the Swedish people like? I think. Yeah, I think they can be perceived as somewhat reserved initially, but once you get to know them, they're very friendly, and I think there's a bit of conformity in Sweden, I guess. Like some people who come to Sweden from other countries experiences as though there's a lot of norms about what you should think and how you should dress and so on, maybe more than in the US, for example. Um, what else? I think Swedes have still quite a lot of trust in the government, quite a lot of social capital, trust in science, and so on. Although it has perhaps declined a bit over the last years and so. Um, yeah, there's a lot of things that could be said, but I don't know.
All
If
right.
I'm not the biggest expert on this topic. I'm not an anthropologist.
No, you're guru. Sorry, you're a psychologist who doesn't want to be a guru.
Scientists, I
Yeah,
would say.
scientist who doesn't want to be a guru. So I should again another question I should have posed earlier. But did you observe sex differences
In
in the
in
receptivity to bullshit?
no, I don't remember exactly, but at least not big differences. The biggest demographic difference is that younger people are more susceptible to misinformation overall and to bullshit. So the age is definitely more important than sex.
Yes. And why would younger people be more susceptible?
Yeah, that's a good question. There might be many different reasons for that. One would be
Less
just
developed
cognitive,
brain.
yeah, cognitive immaturity, lack of experience, but it can also be the actual generational differences, possibly that they have grown up in a different world and are more used to getting all their information from TikTok or from from these kinds of sources where there's a lot of misinformation. So, and the older adults, don't use TikTok. They're more used to looking at traditional news in Sweden, at least. So I think that might be one of the reasons as well.
I used to say that people should not get their news from social media because social media is an entertainment platform. It is not a news platform. So
Mm.
I like academic journals. These days I read way more journal articles like your publication than newspapers. I don't
Mhm.
think that reading newspapers currently is quite productive, but you can use social media for news if you have a good filter. So if you look at the Economist website on social media or you make a post, then the Economist will pop up into your feed. So based on the type of accounts you engage, you get a variation of the news. So if you're always engaging entertainers or comedians or people who spread fake news, you don't get high quality news. But if the people you engage are scientists or respected publications, the type of people who pop up into your feed, they will always quote scientific data. So in my feed, the people who pop up frequently are people who cite data. It used to be more frequent though, since Donald Trump is now the president. So these days I get a lot of MAGA people. I don't have an issue with Donald Trump any at all, but some of the MAGA people are just too stupid, so I mute them. So
Mhm.
I don't muting. But if you engage the right account, you get a better quality version of the news. So Twitter
Yeah.
can be a good filter.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works. I don't use social
Yeah, as I
media.
said, if you mute them, so for
With,
example, if you read The
yeah,
Economist will pop up, the Financial Times will pop up. But if you go over to, let's say, Alex Jones will pop up. People like Alex Jones will pop up. So
yeah.
it's all about
And
your
yeah,
engagement.
I just want to make one point there that the people citing scientific data is not a guarantee, because that's actually used also a lot in spreading misinformation. Like there was this ivermectin.
Oh yeah, yes,
Yeah.
ivermectin.
So there were some people who promoted this as a treatment for COVID and claimed that the efficacy of ivermectin had been suppressed by the medical industry, which is complete nonsense. There wasn't any credible scientific evidence for this, but they cite these articles, which many of which have later proved to be just
They were
fabrication.
retracted. One was retracted. I read it.
Yeah, not just one, but many of
Yeah,
them.
well, I know that
But
one was retracted. But again,
yeah,
if the article is retracted and the people are honest, they will say it. So people pop into my feed who will say, okay, this article was retracted or this study was retracted. So it's all about
yeah,
the credibility of the people you choose to
yeah,
follow. Because if you
yeah. I
post,
mean,
yeah, it's all about the credibility of the people you choose to follow.
yeah,
So but you have to be strict about it. So as I said to you
uh,
before, I do a lot of muting on Twitter.
yeah. But as you said before, people have different abilities. Not everyone is very critical.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that this. I wouldn't recommend this as a general strategy for getting your news to the general population. I can't speak to individual cases. I don't know your feed and so on, but I mean, generally, I think it would be better if people would get more of their news from traditional media that are
Yes.
reliable. I mean, of course, that difference between countries in authoritarian regimes, of course, you can't get your news from the sort of official state media, but in democratic regimes, I think that is better for most people.
Yeah, and I don't think that the state should be involved in the media business like the BBC in the UK.
Hmm.
A state-owned media company can't be independent. And in the UK, you pay the TV tax, which I hate. It funds the BBC. So that just bred some of my animosity for the BBC.
Yeah, but it's still better than most of the options, right?
Yeah, I
It's
like
still good.
BBC Future. Again,
Yeah.
you have to be specific about what you read. I like BBC Future. So the BBC Future has different commentaries. A commentary for psychology, the personality commentary. So I like BBC Future, but I'm not interested in BBC Opeds. So
Hmm.
again, yeah, you have to be selective of what you read. So as a reader, I have no problem muting people. Yeah, that's so if I think that you're becoming hysterical, I just you're churned. So I do my
Hmm.
yearly churning of writers. So they're the writers who were read when I was like a toddler, a teenager, 2022. I don't read them anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be important to try to not just find stories that confirm what you already believe. There's this thing called confirmation bias, which you may be aware of.
Yes.
That people have this fundamental psychological tendency to seek information that confirms what they already believe, and they notice this information and remember it. And that's actually very pernicious and difficult to break. But one strategy that actually works is if you look for information that uh, if you actively look for counterexamples or information that or perspectives that are contrary to what you believe, and you try to so it's kind of like the philosopher called Popper,
Yes.
philosopher of science, is that you try to falsify your own ideas, you try to
Yes.
criticize them, because then you if you find the best critiques of your ideas, then you can revise them, you can throw out the bad ideas and you can revise those that don't work,
And
then you can have better ideas. So I think that would be very important if you're looking for information and news online.
and people should strive for insight. So when I am reading an article, I want to be informed. I like insightful articles. Today too many are in a quest to be contradictory. I am never contradictory for the sake of doing it. You should strive to be insightful. Yeah, so I maybe you should do a study on the roots of contrarianism. Why contrarianism is not always positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, contrarianism is really hot today, but it is not always a positive.
No, of course not. I mean, it's very appealing to say that, to go into this. I mean, it's it's something that a lot of people find appealing. This sort of anti-establishment narratives or conspiracy theory narratives that challenge the authority, um, and challenge the established wisdom. But yeah.
Yeah. So also, yeah. So author. So I'm on your page. So you have published many papers. I have looked at some of them, and there's one paper that I am. This is it. You weren't the first author, but it's a recent paper. The role of
Mm-hmm.
political fit and censorship at work for job satisfaction, social belonging, burnout, and turnover intentions.
Mm-hmm.
Why would
Yeah.
people suppress political ideas in the workplace?
Well, that might be for several reasons. Might be that they think that they will be punished for having the wrong opinions. Uh, it might be that they don't want to share their private beliefs and thoughts with others. They want to be more private. Um, but yeah, if I remember correctly, well, we found that self censorship was had a very negative impact on well-being in the workplace, and predicted turnover intentions and so on. I don't remember the specific details, but yeah,
But
at least, I mean, if people, it's not necessarily that people need to share their beliefs, but they need to feel that they don't have to censor themselves if they want to share their
okay,
beliefs. If they don't want to share their beliefs, that's fine, but it shouldn't be that they feel that they have to censor themselves, that they can say what they actually think and their actual opinions on things to their boss and their colleagues.
yeah, I don't agree with censorship even in the workplace, but the workplace is a professional context. So if you go to work and you are speaking about politics with people who are interested in discussing politics, that's okay. But the idea of promoting politics in the workplace, that's
Yeah.
not really okay. So if I'm your colleague
Mm.
and you're promoting Hillary posters, I might not care,
Mm.
but that's tacky. You should just do that at home or somewhere else.
Yeah. But this is not just about politics. This is about opinions on everything. Like say the company has a new strategy. This is our strategy. This is our vision. These are our values, so to speak. And then people don't feel that they can raise their concerns or criticize that or have a different opinion. I mean, it doesn't have to be like this is conservative or liberal. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I
It's
do, and I don't think that a company can have a philosophy, but companies don't have culture. I had this discussion with a management professor recently, and we didn't buy the concept of corporate culture. Companies
Mhm.
have a philosophy. They're in the business of making money. I am not in favor of corporate social responsibility. I have no issue with companies making donations, but companies should
Mhm.
never impose foreign ideas on staff. So I don't. If you are running a company, it shouldn't be your business if your staff members are pro climate hysteria or pro the trans movement. That's none of your business, or anti the trans movement. That's none of your business. You shouldn't. A company should not be celebrating Pride Month. And if the company does, your employees don't need to be a part of it. Like work, I'm old fashioned. Work should strictly be for work.
Yeah.
Yeah, work should strictly be for work.
Yeah. It is sort of outside of my area of expertise,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah,
difficult
yeah.
to
Well,
comment. But
it's
like,
within your area of expertise because you wrote the paper, but we're just
yeah,
discussing it
yeah,
more
yeah,
broadly. And work
yeah,
should
yeah.
be for work. I
Mhm,
don't know why people like to be so political at work.
mhm.
You
Okay.
know?
I, yeah, maybe that's more common in the U.S. context. I don't
Yeah,
know.
because you're Swede, and I guess the Swedes,
Yeah.
as you said, they're more reserved.
I mean, I can say one thing that I find kind of interesting is that there's a lot of discussions in the US about academia being politicized, and there's a lot of strong language. And I just feel like, what the heck is going on in the US? It seems to be very different from other places. When American academics discuss US academia, uh, it seems like they're talking specifically about the US and not about academia in general. I mean, there is very little of this extreme politicization in Scandinavia. I think that some commentators talk about in the U.S. Uh, I think there are huge differences between the U.S. academia and academia in general,
Yeah,
internationally, so to speak.
but the American people find it difficult to appreciate context.
Yeah.
They do. So Jamaica is a super religious country, more religious than the Swedes, more religious than America.
Yeah, of
Yes,
course. Yeah.
Jamaicans are super religious and they're fundamentalists. They take strong positions on conservative issues. But in Jamaica, when you go to school, you learn secular knowledge. So the creationism debate that never comes up in Jamaica. And why is that the case? Because Jamaican teachers, when they went to university, they studied science, they did not study religion. So creationism never appears in the syllabus unless you're studying religious studies. And America is a more educated country than Jamaica, but they don't appreciate context. When you go to school, that's secular knowledge. When you're at church, you talk about creationism. That's just creationism is not science.
Hmm.
There are people who criticize Darwinian evolution who are not Christian. They're scientists. I have no problem with critiques of Darwinian evolution. That's okay. But creationism people just get real.
Yeah,
Why
I mean that.
creationism to students like at the university level? Students are exposed to higher levels of knowledge. So at when you're at UE, when you're at the university, you should learn every topic. So you can study Darwinian evolution, you can read William Dembski, everybody, because that's a university. But at the high school level, that's not necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of deliberate confusing of things in those contexts. Uh, Creationism is a critique of Darwinian evolution, as you said. When scientists criticize it, they don't criticize Darwinian evolution per se. They criticize various. I mean, there are various critical discussions about details in the theory of evolution. How does speciation occur, for example? And there, if somebody comes with a critique of the theory, it's not like criticizing that there was evolution. It's
Yeah.
criticizing some specific aspect in the account of speciation or whatever, you know. So that's
And I said
very different kind.
at
It's a
the
very
uni-
different kind of critique.
yes, I know I've heard Stephen Meyer before. As I said, at the university level, people should be exposed to all critiques. That's important. But at the primary level, you're 12, 13, there is no reason for people to be talking about creationism or any other idea that Americans like to discuss. I just don't know.
Oh, yeah,
Like I said, Jamaicans are super religious, but
yeah,
we're not fan. Some of us from Jamaica are even fanatics. But when it comes to school, school is not church,
mm,
and we have devotions in school in Jamaica because we're religious. But we
of course.
don't. We're not like Americans. Like I'm like Americans, they find it difficult to understand context. Like not every crazy idea online should be taken seriously. Some ideas are just funny, and you move on.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, of course, the education system should be separate from religious issues in a secular society, and separate from politics as well, in my view, as much as
Yeah, so
possible.
like and there are too many activists in higher education in America. That's also an issue. Activist academics.
Yeah, well, I would paint the picture as a little bit more complex. I think there is a traditional issue with that activism that has gone too far in America, but there's also the opposite, that there are these extreme narratives that are just taking the most egregious examples and exaggerating and making it seem like the entire academia in America or globally is just an indoctrination place, and that's just completely extremely exaggerated narrative as well. So I think it comes from both sides, to be honest. It's just very polarized. Uh, the climate in the U.S.
Maybe that's what you should study in the future. Why are Americans wired differently? Why are they so partisan?
Yeah, I mean that's a very interesting question. I don't know if I am the right person because I'm not an anthropologist. But yeah, I definitely think that's an interesting issue. I think there are actually U.S. culture and problems that occur in the U.S. have a lot of influence on the debates in academia. Uh, sometimes sometimes the polarization in American culture spills over into academia, into, for example, political psychology tends to be very polarized. There's one group of researchers that is more like, let's say, one group is more liberal and one is more conservative, and they clash with each other, and it's very. I always try to paint a more nuanced picture. It's not about saying that either side is better generally, but
But Arthur, nuance is
yeah.
good. I like nuance. But if you're always being nuanced, you will never become a guru.
Yeah, that's good. That's great.
No, I want to see that I know a guru.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I much rather be nuanced than a guru.
Yeah,
So
when
that's
you're a guru, you can charge $100,000 for a speech.
yeah. If you're a very successful guru, not every guru I think can do that.
Yeah, it's like people these days who sell a course. Like everybody selling a course or something like that.
Yeah,
Or they write on Substack. I have a
yeah.
Substack page. I don't use it frequently,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is quite paradoxical. Not me, but the context is paradoxical because we're in this age of contrarianism, yet our aspirations are all equally vague and equally the same.
Hmm.
So the Substack event, everybody who writes, they all want a Substack. The entrepreneur to podcasting pipeline, or the failed comedian to political commentator pipeline, they all follow the same sequences. So if
Yeah,
you are relatively okay as a comedian, you're not super famous, but enough people know you, but you're never going to be a famous comedian, just become a podcaster or a political commentator, or take a position that's opposite the mainstream, and people turn you into an expert.
yeah. I think it's unfortunate that people who are making these very black and white and exaggerated claims that they're so successful in today's.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we need sort of a cultural shift back to valuing nuance and valuing correctness and valuing someone who is saying perhaps boring but correct and interesting stuff, not just these crazy, outrage provoking narratives.
Yeah, like
And people also, I think we should value people who say, I don't know, like people
yes,
who are humble and who don't, you have some. some people who have, maybe I should mention Jordan Peterson. He started out as an academic, but then he started out talking about issues that were at least partly related to his expertise. But then he started making claims about all kinds of things, about climate change and vaccines and whatnot, things that he doesn't know anything about.
Well,
I mean,
Arthur,
he should just say, be humble and say, I
yeah,
don't know.
personally, I know that Jordan Peterson is a personality psychologist. I've seen his research. He could be a brilliant psychologist, but as a guru and public intellectual, I don't listen to Jordan Peterson. I don't find him interesting. No, seriously, I don't think Jordan Peterson is really bringing anything new to the table. Like, why is Jordan Peterson famous? Jordan Peterson is famous for channeling suppressed consent. He became a leading critic of the transgender hysteria in Canada. Many
Yeah.
people agree with him, and as a result, he's famous. Jordan Peterson is not famous for being controversial in
No.
the original meaning of the word.
No, I think he's a great narrator. He's great at telling stories. That's his major talent,
Mythology,
I think.
exactly. He's really interested in writers who study mythology and religion. So he's basically a shaman.
Yeah, he has transformed into a kind of guru figure nowadays. But I think once upon a time he was quite good at talking about some scientific stuff, making up interesting narratives to make people interested in the scientific theories. So, but yeah, has transformed into a guru
All
figure.
right. So thanks for coming on. We're wrapping up. Bye. It was
Yeah,
a pleasure speaking to you.
yeah. Thanks for inviting me.